In a quiet neighborhood in Lagos, there lived a woman named Mrs. Akpan, but everyone called her Belleful. She was a large woman, round like a drum, with a loud voice that resonated throughout the entire compound. Belleful owned a 2-story building where she resided with her tenants. She was notorious for her love of food, especially mangoes, which she grew at the back of the compound. She often warned everyone, "Nobody should touch my mangoes. If I catch you, there will be trouble." Belleful was not only feared for her size but also for her temper. She had no tolerance for nonsense, and her sharp tongue could leave even the most confident tenant speechless. Tenants often whispered behind her back about how she had chased away several past renters with her harsh treatment. She would demand rent at odd hours, inspect their rooms without prior notice, and seize items she believed belonged to her. But her biggest obsession was her mango tree. The mango tree stood tall in the backyard, its branches spreading wide like a giant umbrella. It bore the juiciest mangoes anyone had ever seen, golden yellow with a hint of red when ripe. The sight of the mangoes was tempting, but Belleful's warning kept everyone in check. She treated the tree as if it were her own child, watering it diligently and watching over it with hawk-like eyes. She would often sit on her veranda, chewing roasted corn, her gaze fixed on the tree, daring anyone to come near it. Among the tenants was a woman named Mama Sofia, who lived with her 8-year-old daughter, Sofia. Mama Sofia struggled to make ends meet, selling a kara by the roadside to provide for her child. Their room was the smallest in the compound, with a leaking roof that turned into a waterfall whenever it rained. Despite their struggles, Mama Sofia always had a smile for her daughter. She encouraged Sofia to be strong and hardworking, telling her bedtime stories about perseverance and kindness. Sofia was a playful girl, full of energy, and loved climbing trees. She always admired the juicy mangoes hanging from Belleful's tree, but she knew better than to touch them. However, she couldn't understand why Belleful was so possessive over the mangoes. "Mango trees grow freely. Why can't everyone enjoy them?" she once asked her mother. "Not everyone thinks like that, my child. Some people value things more than kindness," Mama Sofia replied, shaking her head. As time passed, Sofia's curiosity about the mango tree grew stronger. Each time she saw a ripe mango fall and roll to the ground, her fingers itched to pick it up. She would watch as the fruits hung low, swaying in the wind, almost as if they were calling her. It was just a matter of time before temptation won over caution. One hot afternoon, Sofia returned from school feeling hungry. Her mother had gone to the market, and there was no food at home. The heat was unbearable, and she felt weak as she dragged her small feet across the compound. Then her eyes landed on Belleful's mango tree, its branches heavy with golden fruit. Her stomach growled, her throat dry with thirst. She licked her lips as she stared at the ripe mangoes swaying in the breeze. Sofia hesitated, remembering Belleful's warning. But the hunger gnawed at her insides, making her dizzy. She swallowed hard and walked closer to the tree. The ground beneath it was scattered with fallen leaves, and she spotted a mango lying in the dirt. She bent down, dusted it off, and sniffed it. The sweet aroma made her mouth water. She knew she shouldn't, but before she could stop herself, she bit into it. The juice dripped down her chin, and for a moment, she forgot all her worries. One mango wasn't enough. She looked up at the tree, where the juiciest fruits hung just beyond reach. Her fingers twitched with temptation. She had climbed trees before, why should today be different? With a determined nod, she grasped the trunk and pulled herself up, her small hands gripping the rough bark as she hoisted herself higher. Her bare feet found footholds, and soon she was among the thick branches, her eyes locked on the biggest mango of them all. Sofia reached out, fingers grazing the smooth skin of the fruit. Just as she plucked it, a voice like thunder shattered the air. "Sofia, what are you doing on my tree?" Belleful's roar sent chills down Sofia's spine. She gasped, nearly losing her grip. Her heart pounded as she turned her head and saw Belleful storming toward the tree, her large frame shaking with rage. The landlady's wrapper flapped in the wind as she stomped forward, her face twisted in fury. Sofia tried to move, but panic paralyzed her. Before she could react, Belleful reached up, grabbed her leg, and yanked her down with terrifying force. The little girl tumbled through the air, crashing onto the hard ground with a painful thud. Her head spun, and pain shot through her tiny body. She whimpered, trying to push herself up, but Belleful's shadow loomed over her like a dark storm cloud. "You thief! You dare steal from me!" Belleful bellowed, her voice echoing through the compound. Neighbors peered from their windows, whispering among themselves, but no one dared interfere. Sofia opened her mouth to plead, but Belleful was beyond reason. Her rage boiled over as she grabbed Sofia's thin arm and hauled her up like a rag doll. Sofia screamed, kicking her legs in a futile attempt to free herself. "Since you like stealing, let me teach you a lesson you will never forget." Belleful spat, dragging the trembling girl toward her apartment. Tears streamed down Sofia's face. "Auntie, please, I won't do it again, I was just hungry. Please forgive me." But Belleful was deaf to her cries. The mango in Sofia's hand rolled onto the ground, forgotten, as Belleful yanked open the door to her kitchen. The tenants gasped, murmuring in horror, but no one dared to stop the enraged woman. As Belleful pulled Sofia inside and slammed the door shut, the entire compound fell into uneasy silence. The only sound left was the rustling of the mango leaves, swaying gently in the afternoon breeze. Belleful, fueled by fury, grabbed Sofia by the arm and lifted her effortlessly. "Since you like stealing, let me teach you a lesson you will never forget," she thundered. She stormed into her apartment, dragged the struggling child into her large kitchen, and flung open the lid of her deep freezer. Without hesitation, she hoisted Sofia up and dropped her inside like a sack of rice. The girl screamed, her tiny fists pounding against the icy walls. "Auntie, please, it's too cold. Let me out," Sofia cried, tears streaming down her face. Belleful ignored her. "You will learn today," she muttered, slamming the lid shut. She didn't realize that the freezer was plugged in. She had only intended to scare Sofia, but in her anger, she had forgotten that the electricity supply was unstable. A few minutes later, just as Belleful stepped outside to enjoy her meal of rice and stew, NEPA restored power. The hum of the freezer filled the silent kitchen. Inside, Sofia, who had been sweating moments ago, suddenly felt a chill creeping over her small body. That evening, when Mama Sofia returned from the market, she called out to her daughter. "Sofia, come and help me with the bags," she called, her voice filled with exhaustion. But no response came. She frowned, adjusting the heavy bags on her arm. Dropping them on the ground, she walked into their small room, expecting to find Sofia inside. But it was empty. Her heart skipped a beat. Where could she be? In the other part of the compound, Belleful had already forgotten all about the little girl locked in her freezer. After her furious act of punishment, she had gone about her evening as if nothing happened. She had eaten a full plate of rice and stew, smacking her lips in satisfaction, and then stretched out on her wooden bench in the corridor, falling into a deep sleep. Meanwhile, Mama Sofia's worry grew. She stepped outside and approached her neighbors, asking if anyone had seen Sofia. Maman Keek, a tenant who was always observant, spoke up. "I saw Belleful dragging Sofia into her room earlier today. Maybe she's still there." Mama Sofia felt a cold chill rush through her. Why would Belleful take her daughter inside her room? Without wasting a second, she hurried towards the landlady's apartment and knocked on her door. The loud knocking startled Belleful from her sleep. Her eyes widened as she sat up, heart pounding. It was at that moment she remembered Sofia was still inside the freezer. Panic shot through her as she leaped from the bench and rushed towards the kitchen. Her hands trembled as she flung open the freezer, but it was too late. The small, fragile body of Sofia lay stiff, her lips blue, her tiny fingers frozen in place. The little girl had frozen to death. A scream tore from Belleful's throat, but it was drowned by the loud banging on her door. Mama Sofia, sensing something was terribly wrong, pushed the door open and ran inside. The loud cries of Mama Sofia echoed through the compound as she pulled open Belleful's freezer, her hands trembling. Sofia's tiny, frozen body lay stiff inside, her lips blue, her skin cold to the touch. The horror of the moment sent a wave of panic through the tenants who had gathered in shock. My child! My child!" Mama Sofia wailed, pulling her daughter's frozen form into her arms, rubbing her face desperately, trying to bring warmth back into her lifeless body. One of the tenants, a young man named Tunde, immediately grabbed his phone and called for an ambulance. "She's still breathing," someone shouted, noticing the faint rise and fall of Sofia's chest. The next few minutes felt like eternity as the ambulance arrived, sirens wailing. The paramedics rushed in, placing Sofia on a stretcher and wrapping her in warm blankets. The crowd followed closely, their voices filled with murmurs of anger and disbelief. Belleful, now realizing the gravity of her actions, collapsed onto the floor. Her large frame trembled as the tenants turned to her with accusing eyes. "You tried to kill an innocent child," someone shouted. As the ambulance sped away with Sofia, the police arrived shortly after, questioning the horrified tenants. With little hesitation, Belleful was placed in handcuffs. "It was a mistake. I only wanted to scare her," she sobbed, but no one showed her sympathy. Days later, the news spread like wildfire. "Landlady freezes tenant's child over mango theft," headlines screamed. People gathered in disbelief as Belleful was led away to face the full wrath of the law. Justice, they knew, had to be served. Back in the hospital, Sofia slowly opened her eyes. She had survived. And though the scars of the trauma would take time to heal, one thing was certain: no mango, no matter how sweet, was worth the price she had nearly paid.
Thank you for watching Story Bees. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing African tales and bedtime stories. See you next time and keep the stories alive.